All right. So, for everyone, when they get to retirement, it's the first time to retire, right? We've never done it before. So it makes sense you would have some assumptions about retirement. They may have heard things from other people about what to expect. They may have some good info on how to retire and some bad info on how to retire. And sometimes might be even making some mistakes that they don't even know they're making. The hidden retirement mysteries.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because I was reading an article from Motley Fool, and the article is called Top 6 Things No One Tells You About Retiring. And I kind of read these things, and I thought, oh, wow, it hit some really good ones. Now, there's probably a lot more than this because I find that there's a lot of people that they are planning their retirements based on what they heard mom and dad had to deal with, right? And some of those things are outdated. Some of those challenges that they had to deal with are different than what today's retiree is having to deal with. So here's one of these things on this list in this article. Again, top 6 things no one tells you about retirement. And the number one thing was required minimum distributions. And it said that those required minimum distributions can seriously raise your costs and your taxes as you move through retirement. Now, we know that when you take your IRAs and your 401ks, once you hit 72 years old, you typically have to take a required minimum distribution from them. And if you don't, Uncle Sam's going to penalize you like 50% of what you should have taken out. While these distributions, when you first start taking them, they're not very big.
No, but boy, they sure grow over time.
Yeah, it might be 3.9, maybe 4%, something like that of whatever it is. So if you've got $1 million IRA, you got to take out like 40 grand, something like that, 39 to 40 grand. But they increase as time goes on. So as you get older, you have to take out more and more and more. And the government's telling you that number, and you don't have a choice. And so what ends up happening is you have some people that started taking out minimum distributions at younger ages, very little. But as they get older, they're having to take out more and more and more. And when you take out more and more and more, it's reported on your taxes almost as earned income as an IRA distribution. And then what happens is your
Social Security could be taxed more.
Right. So you're moving up into a higher tax bracket potentially. So your taxes are going up as you're getting older, which doesn't make sense. So that's why it's called what no one tells you about retirement, is that as you get older, your taxes could get higher. The second thing you mentioned that, Dad, is Social Security.
Yeah, it increases over time. But along with that, so does your Medicare payments go up.
Your Part B.
Yeah, and you don't really see that. They just take it out of your check. If they sent you a bill for it, it would be real. But they don't. They just kind of take it out. So you think, gee, I'm going to get an increase. It's just not as big as you may have thought.
So meaning your increase, yay, isn't as much of an increase.
Hey, so don't you think that, this was pretty interesting because we talked about Social Security and the 5.9% cost of living adjustment for Social Security beneficiaries in 2022 last fall when this was going into play. Medicare premium Part B was like $148.50, and they were projecting, well, it'll probably go to $158.50. Well, it actually went to like $171.
Yeah.
That was a much bigger increase than everybody was expecting.
Surprise. And a lot of people didn't know that, right? So when they first got their Social Security things, their new payment, they just said, hey, my Social Security went up.
Well, it's just
but you didn't look at what it did to Medicare.
It's just like these RMDs. People have to take it out. And so many people don't realize that income that they have to take out, need it or not, they have to take it out, could make their Social Security taxed anywhere. They have to report 50 to 85% of it on taxes.
Yeah, so you have people who are saying, I'm just taking minimum distributions and I have pension and Social Security income. I have a modest retirement, but then they find out 85% of their Social Security is being taxed. And if you don't know if your Social Security is being taxed, just grab your 1040 form. Look right on the front of it. You'll see where there's a line that says Social Security income, and then right next to that, taxable amount. If you have a large amount written on that line that says taxable amount of Social Security taxable, then you'll know I'm being taxed on my Social Security.
But the crazy thing about that is if you're single, you can be taxed up to 50% on your Social Security if you just make $25,000 modified adjusted
Not much,
income.
right?
And then it's 85% at $34,000. Married, filing jointly, 50% is $32,000, up to 85% at $44,000. The numbers are a lot lower than I would expect.
And they haven't changed the math since the 90s, Mark. They haven't changed the math. So whereas we have inflation and all this other stuff, $40,000 is not what $40,000 was in the 90s. $25,000 today is not what $25,000 was in the 90s. And so they haven't changed the math, which is unfortunate. And that's why we're talking about this, because this is what nobody is talking about. But another thing nobody's talking about is the third thing on this list, which is that it gets substantially harder to wait out a bad market once you retire.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Especially when you're 65 or 70.
Right. Because before, when you work, you had a salary, and that would cover your cost of living should a big market decline happen, because you didn't really need that money because you're still working. But here's what happens. When you retire, you're pulling money out of those accounts to make ends meet, to pay for the bills. And when the market goes down and the market takes a nosedive, you may not want to pull money out because it's down. But the problem is you might not have a choice. You may have to.
And this is why getting a portfolio stress test done on your money is a non-negotiable.
Absolutely.
You know, these days, you just have to know how much you could lose if the market heads down. This can help you pinpoint if you run the risk of running out of money during retirement or not.